Hey guys, so new video. So I had an idea of making like miniature paintings. So I made out some sketches. So far I'm like kind of like meh on most of them, but I did end up refining this one. I think I really like this one because I can keep it relatively simple compared to like some of the other ideas that I had. I do like the flower idea, but I'm still like not completely sold on it. I might make a couple more sketches. But for now, I will be painting that one refined sketch onto here. So I actually already primed these a while back. So they're all smooth with the gesso. So yeah, I'm gonna take you guys along the journey with me. So I decided to start out with a color thumbnail, which isn't something I always do. And yes, this is bigger than a usual thumbnail, but I did all my sketches with the actual canvas size, just to keep in mind how small I would be working. Now, the reason that I did the color thumbnail was often because when I feel like a painting is intimidating for some reason or another, in this case it was because I've never quite worked this small in regards to a painting. So I felt like establishing the colors a little bit would help me sort of move on to the actual painting without feeling so worried about the final result. In this case, while the colors that I chose for the color thumbnail weren't exactly what I went for with the actual painting, I'm still really happy I did the color thumbnail. It sort of helped me establish what kind of colors I would like, how dark I would like those colors to be, and so on. And it really just takes some of that fear away when starting a painting. So in order to transfer the sketch, I used transfer paper. Now what this is almost like a see-through paper where I trace the sketch on one side, and then on the back side of that paper, I go ahead and I add some more graphite onto where my lines are. That way when I go back and trace it again onto the canvas, the graphite that I added will stick onto the canvas, if that makes sense. So as you can see here, the graphite that I added onto the back side is now onto the canvas. Now this is completely unnecessary, but there were some bits that just weren't as like refined after the transfer process, so I did go back in and sort of sketch or refine some of my lines, just so there wasn't like any confusion about like what I wanted to do, or that I didn't miss anything that I might not have traced completely with the transfer paper. So originally I was actually going to use some gouache paint that I had been given, but I have sort of a checkered relationship with gouache. It's just not something that works for me. So the blue that I used for the water and the sky was gouache, but I wasn't really liking the feel of it, so when it came to painting the mountains, I did go back and use acrylic paint. So as you can see, I just started off with some green paint. Now I am using a smaller brush than I would have liked, but that's because my initial thought process was that I would sort of paint around the sketched lines, and sort of leave those blank to then go on top of with a black paint or black ink. But that quickly was something I gave up on. it felt too much of a hassle. I also felt like I wouldn't get a very even surface if I went about painting around the lines instead of just adding them back on later. So you will see me switch to a slightly bigger paintbrush. So I also went ahead and painted the sides of the canvas. Because it's such a small canvas, I really wanted to make the most of it, and continuing the painting onto the side just felt really fitting. After it had dried, I did go back in and do a second coat of paint just to make sure I got a really solid green color, and for that I did use the thicker paintbrush. As I moved on to painting the smaller mountains that were sort of receding into the background, I took that same original green that I had mixed and I added a bit of blue and white as I went on. That's just like an atmospheric perspective kind of thing to sort of show that the mountains are moving backwards, or not moving backwards, but are farther away than the mountain that is up front. And for these, I did use the bigger brush to sort of cover a little bit more ground, but I did end up going back in with the smaller brush that I first used just to refine some of the edges. So as I painted the mountains, I also used that same blue-green color in the water. I did this because I wanted the colors that I used to feel a little bit more harmonious, if that makes sense. So at the end of it, even though I do have different colors going on, they're all very related to each other and it feels very fitting with one another. For the water, I did decide to darken it quite a bit. It felt a little bit too light in comparison to everything else, but I did go back in towards the end and added a bit more highlights to the water. So when it came to painting the very front bushes slash mountains, I decided to use the original green I had mixed and added in a bit of yellow to brighten it up and make it a bit warmer. So at the end of painting, this is what it looked like. Overall, I'm really happy with it, even though there are some things after having this experience that I would have changed when it comes to making such a small painting. Probably the first and foremost was just using gouache. I don't think I will be trying that out anytime soon again. After I finished painting, I did go back in with a micron. Unfortunately, I did not film this part just because of how close my face had to get with the painting. But I do like the added black lines. I feel like it gives it a little extra something. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.